Machine learning is based on complex mathematical operations to determine trends based on data analysis, but the expert can know the calculation process used and therefore understand the chosen decision. On the contrary, the techniques used in deep learning are based on the use of neural networks, where each neuron is given some parameters, and weights are applied to obtain an optimal solution. The complexity of the neural network depends on the number of neuron layers and the number of neurons per layer. Currently, the most complex ones work with more than 256 layers. This system is so complex that it is often very difficult to determine which is the parameter or set of parameters, and the weight applied to them, which determines the result. And although the probability of success is very high, nobody knows the exact process. Value selection. This complexity is called a black box. Now these techniques are the ones that solve the most complex problems with the best probability, but it is difficult to know exactly the process of determining the result. For this reason, an ethical debate is opened. It is correct that, by using complex techniques, with a greater probability of success in decision-making, especially if it applies to people, the expert is unaware of the election process, or it is better not use such complex techniques that offer a lower probability but that the expert can know the reason for the decision. This doubt increases with the appearance of false positives or false negatives. This is the ethical dilemma about the black box or the white box. That is why the following questions arise. In the case of medical decisions, is the black box concept good or bad? What should prioritize the probability of success or the knowledge of the process of obtaining the answer? Should there be regular monitoring of results and correction of algorithms? This answer would always be yes, because neural networks degrade when there is no periodic training with new data. When can a system be considered sufficiently validated for use in a medical decision setting? With this question, we could be debating for a long time. Currently, the best algorithms have been developed by large companies such as Alphabet, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft, GAFAM, which have access to infinite data, which allows them to use artificial intelligence decisively, achieving a market share. Very high market. On the other hand, countries like China also have ambitious AI strategies that are supported by the government. The president of Russia, in a press conference, said, "Whoever wins the race in AI will probably become the ruler of the world." We are going through a time when the power of the use of AI is revolutionizing the strategy of various countries. This desire for power makes us ask ourselves several questions. How do we make sure that the monopolies that we are creating distribute wealth equally, and that we don't have a few countries that can develop their strategy ahead of the rest of the world? Balancing that power is a serious challenge in the world of AI. There are countries where their laws allow abortion, euthanasia, dignified death, sex change, etc., although health personnel can participate voluntarily based on their ethical principles. On the other hand, in others, this practice is prohibited, although there may be health personnel who, based on their ethical principles, can secretly carry out this practice. There will come a time when technology will be able to determine compliance or non-compliance with requirements. Will we demand freedom in making these decisions? Now, it is known that there are certain patterns when using social networks that can determine certain eating disorders, mental illnesses, etc. Should health authorities use social networks to identify these patterns and act preventively? This issue is very complex and should lead to calm reflection. Should the authorities use social networks to influence the population? Should they use them to improve the habits of their population? Who is responsible for some of the things that AIs are creating? Artificial intelligence can now be used to create text, programs, videos, pictures, etc. On one side, it can create fake videos that can be misleading. Who is the author of this material, and what do we do with this type of fake news if it spreads on the internet? On the other side, AI can create art and music. When an AI writes a new piece of music, who does it belong to? Who owns the intellectual property rights and potentially should get paid for it? The conclusion that we can draw is that ethical problems are never the fault of the mathematical models used, but of the inappropriate use of the people who use them. If the models are not updated, they degrade, that is, if there are changes in the population of the data, it can make the model useless. Ethical problems are generated by the inappropriate use, voluntarily or involuntarily, of technology. Well, that is all from my side. I hope that these questions were useful to reflect the great advantages of using artificial intelligence and the ethical doubts that the inappropriate use of certain parameters supposes.